You said it like 6 times.
We're
We're live.
What's up?
Hey.
Hi, everybody. A little fun last minute show here.
All right, we're going to play a game.
Okay.
Guess what's in the top left corner of Elon's video?
Okay. It's actually a calendar.
No,
Okay, I'm using it to block.
you have to let people guess first.
Well, the thing with, it's only us on the call. Whereas I just
Yeah,
took
but
it
you
off.
just leave a pause.
Well, I'll edit it in. How about that?
Edit it into the YouTube video?
I mean, technically I could.
You've never edited a YouTube video, have
But
you?
I have when you've been like, I need to take out a swear word or something.
So like once.
Yeah. Okay. There. Now you can barely see it. It's probably going to fall in the middle of recording. But yeah, there was a light coming in here. Oh, and look how bad it looks behind me now that I can see it.
How bad what? Oh. It always looks like that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining. We have Shams and we have Matt here, which is a really great crew. So yeah, we're gonna try to knock out a fun show here. Not a short shift, but not a long. Okay, well, I'll save it for the show. What's my opening joke? Hosted by two guys who. Okay, I don't know. Okay, I got it. I'll make it up as I go. Here we go.
Huh?
I'm gonna start.
Oh,
Yeah. Whoop. Yay! Yeehaw! Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who actually recorded a show last weekend that we haven't even released yet. So I don't even know what number this show is, but that doesn't matter because I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and I'm here with my great co-host who is going to help me break down the latest in NHL off-season action, even though the NHL season isn't even over yet. I don't know. We'll figure this out. It's the fantasy hockey robot, the poobah prognostication, the IPP MVP, Brian Com. Brian, how's it going?
Really good. A little confused. Like, you don't generally open with like, this is episode number, and then you apologize for not having that straight. Also, we were trying to maintain somewhat of an illusion that it was a live drop when we did drop that one that's in the can that we recorded last week.
We said on the show, I think I said that Edmonton just won Game 5, and we'll see. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that last weekend when we recorded it.
All right. Well, it is what it is. We're happy to be here, and I'm thrilled that Cap Friendly still exists for this episode. Like, I was thinking about, Elon was saying, we want to check out the trades, see what's happened, see how that affects rosters, and, my go-to has become Cap Friendly and their depth charts. So freaking good. So, well, I'm not gonna change it yet. I'm gonna enjoy it while it lasts, and then move on as I need to.
Figure it out from there.
But hi everybody. Happy happy end of June. The Stanley Cup is awarded tomorrow. Maybe today, maybe yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this. It's and couple registration is about to open too. So those are two really exciting things. You'll hear more about the couple registration once that Stanley Cup is awarded. Check your feed.
Yeah. So basically, just to explain everything we're talking about, so there's no secrecy here. We recorded the show last weekend. The plan was, that's all about the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patriot Fantasy League. The plan was to drop that when the cup is awarded, because that's the day that registration will be available. And we talked all about the rules, and it's a really fun show. So actually, I don't have to say probably. That's going to drop tomorrow after the cup's awarded, or maybe if we fall asleep, then maybe Tuesday morning. But that episode's going to drop. Couple registration will be open. It'll be awesome. But in the meantime, Brian and I weren't planning to record a show this weekend. But all of a sudden this week, there were a couple trades. There's some news. All of a sudden, I'd be like, I don't want to fall behind. Because then what about by next weekend? We're already going to have the draft. There might be more trades. I don't like the feeling of having a build-up of stuff to talk about. So we're going to clear the slate here with these great trades. Some excitement before the season's over. I wonder if the NHL likes us. It's kind of weird. Did Edmonton and Florida even have the option to trade for Markstrom, or are they not allowed since they're still playing? What if they want to be involved in the sweepstakes for these players?
I feel like everyone is allowed, but
it never happens, right? You never see a team in the Cup Finals make a trade.
It'd actually be really interesting to know, the latest into the playoffs, that an active playing team has made a deal. It's a really good question. That sounds like a Down Goes Brown article.
Okay. Let us know, listeners, if you know of anything. But yeah, we'll get into all of it. Before we do, Brian.
But also. I was just going to say, this is the chance. I think it's a good play for every other team to be like, hey, quick, while they're distracted, right? All those teams, like, congrats, you got to the cup finals, and now everybody's already trying to beat you while you're still playing. That's heavy as the head that wears the crown.
I guess. I mean, in my dynasty leagues I play in, it's not like once you're eliminated from the playoffs, you can make trades while the fantasy playoffs are still going. But I guess, hey, maybe that should be the rule moving forward. So, Brian, a couple things I wanted to mention. First of all, Keeping Karlsson, proudly presented by DobberHockey.com. Awesome website. They've already broken down the trades from this past week, of course, as they always do. Also, Frozen Tools. Another great, you mentioned Cap Friendly. I use that a lot too, but I also use Frozen Tools all the time to prep the show, to look at stats. It's amazing. The other thing, Brian, is it feels like a million years ago, but we've been running the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool, and it's still going. We redrafted every round. So for the final round, there were 4 divisions of 2 players each. So 4 head-to-head drafts where each person took 10 players. So we have 8 people, and I figure we might as well take a quick look, because it's going to go down to the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals tomorrow between Edmonton and Florida. I'm sure everyone who's listening probably knows that that's happening. I wanted to give a quick shout out to what it looks. Okay, you don't want to always get. Who knows what could happen right now? Harris, aka N080 Die is back. I've never actually said that. I've read that name so many times. I have no idea what that what that's supposed to mean. But I know that I checked, and the person's name is Harris. He's winning. He's got 46 points in his matchup against Beefers and Cream, which is Blake from the Apples and Ginos. So yeah, Blake is definitely not going to be winning, but obviously amazing to make it to the finals. So it's 46 points for Harris. And then the next highest is 42 points for Dark Expert. So you'd think 46 versus 42 should be enough, but it could be a high-scoring game. Who knows? But that'll be fun to crown a KKPP winner. It's a big accomplishment. There was a lot of people that started it off. I made it to round 2. I think you made it to round 2, Brian, but
I did not.
You didn't even make it. Yeah, it's hard to make it all the way down to round 4 and grind through these long finals.
It's basically it's about as hard as winning the actual Stanley Cup. Like, there are a lot of really close analogies to winning the KKPP in the Stanley Cup. And also, there's a 4-point lead. That's like a 3-0 lead. So we'll see what happens to it in the final game of the of all seasons except the off season.
You know what, though? If you think about it, the Stanley Cup is actually kind of a lot easier to win. Like, a lot of people win the Stanley Cup. Only one person wins the KKPP.
Oh, that's true. So, we should tell NHL players about this.
Yeah. Are they allowed to play in a fantasy playoff pool? Or, if it's not for money, then I feel like it should be okay if it's just for fun.
I think so. But
I don't know what the rules are.
I don't know either.
Is that what Shane Pinto got suspended for?
I was going to say, I was like, which one of us is going to... I was just going to pass it by, but you did it. I was like, we'll find out what Shane Pinto did, which I don't think we ever did.
By the way, do you have plans tomorrow, Brian? I'm super excited. At the start, I was like, yeah, go Edmonton. That'll be cool. But I wasn't losing my mind over it. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, they were down 3-0. McDavid, it's probably a long shot, but McDavid has a chance still at this Gretzky record, or at least to maybe come second overall in playoff points ever. It's going to be a really historic game. Also, here's the craziest thing. I'm sitting at breakfast a couple days ago after Edmonton won Game 6, and I'm talking to my daughter, who doesn't really understand what I'm talking about because she's only 1 year old. Well, 1.5, a little above that. And I was like, you know what? Lucky you. You're going to grow up potentially in a world where a Canadian team wins the Stanley Cup. That hasn't happened in forever. Then I realized, hey, dum-dum, when I was her age, it was 1984. You know who won the cup that year, Brian?
Yes. Edmonton.
Yeah. It's the same. She's living the same life as me.
That's crazy.
She cares as much as I did.
Confirmed. And when you were...
So Edmonton is going to win.
And when you were a baby, one of your parents said to you that, they were talking to you about it.
Well, I definitely don't think Edmonton won when they were one. That team didn't exist. But the cycle now, it's a 40-year cycle.
Yes.
That's resetting, which means actually Canadian teams are going to win for the whole rest of the decade. If you look at the 80s, Edmonton, Montreal, Edmonton, Calgary... Edmonton. It was a lot of Edmonton, but also Montreal and Calgary got in there. No Toronto,
you have your Technicolor Dreamcoat on. You've seen years of famine, and now we're seeing years of plenty ahead for Canadian NHL teams.
Yeah, with McDavid playing the Gretzky role, it all fits. So now watch everyone listening to this will be like, "Hey, dumb, Florida won 7-0." But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't know. I'm calling it. I think Edmonton's going to win. Anyhow, so that's that. That's the KKPP. let's get into the business of the NHL and obviously the fantasy implications. That's what we like to do here. It's kind of fun. You know, in the off season, we don't get too much of this. So soon it's coming. Big time. July 1st, we're going to have the free agency opening, and usually at the draft, there's a few trades, and then there's the draft itself, which has some intrigue. But yeah, so Brian, let me bring up our little show plan here, and I think the number one deal we need to talk about is Jacob Markstrom being traded from the Calgary Flames to the New Jersey Devils. They got a first back. They got Kevin Ball, who's like a second, third pairing, probably third pairing defenseman, an NHL player, but a first is a first. And they unload this contract, but Calgary is retaining some of the contract. I guess both sides are affected in an interesting way here, but let's start in New Jersey. They've got their goaltender, right? Last year, Akira Schmid seemed decent for a little while. Vanacek was like at one point, according to a lot of stats, like the worst goalie in the entire league by a decent margin. I guess it was like him and Jack Campbell, was it? Or maybe that was the year before. But anyways, Vanacek stunk. So New Jersey was in trouble.
It was last year, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Nico Dawes came up for a bit. He did okay for a little while, but couldn't handle it. Anyways, it was very clear New Jersey needs an actual starting goalie with some experience. They get Jacob Markstrom, 34 years old. On paper, like I think that it's like this is clearly in terms of if you have like Jacob Markstrom in your keeper league, his value has probably gone up. You would think he's going to a better team. He's whatever, you got a goalie on a better team. You'd think. You don't think there's too much challenge, you would think, from the backup? Like this year, Markstrom played a lot of games with Vladar as his backup. Now he's going to have Jake Allen. I don't know if people remember, Jake Allen is now going to be the backup over on New Jersey. So Dawes and Schmid could spend another year in the minors, which probably is good for them. They probably could use the development. And then we'll have Markstrom and Allen, barring injury. So yeah, I guess I have an opinion, but let's throw to you because I've been talking too much. What do you think about this? For let's say we're doing Schmore goalies board. We're starting to plan out like how high does this put Markstrom in our goalie tiers, being the clear starting goalie on? I mean, they didn't make the playoffs this year, but I think it's because of the goaltending. So what should be, especially now with Dougie Hamilton back, it should be a really good team. Should be a playoff team, you would think.
It should be. I mean, we said the same thing last year, and really the one very glaring challenge that the Devils had was goaltending, and like some injuries definitely didn't help. But goaltending was an issue, and we saw the Devils try and solve that in season. Elon, I don't think you mentioned Kaapo Kakkonen, who was also part of the attempted solution. He's UFA, and so
he's gone now.
Yeah, not expecting he'll be back. But at 5-on-5, I'm just checking this out. The Devils were not like awesome defensively. Like they were like maybe bottom third of the league. Like just like at the top of the bottom third. But for save percentage, they were worse. At 5-on-5, the Devils had a team save percentage of .904, which was the 5th worst team save percentage in the league, ahead of just Tampa. Jonas Johansson will do that to you. Ottawa, San Jose, and Philadelphia. So yeah, even though they didn't necessarily deserve like a whole lot, they deserved better. All right, they deserved better, but they also need some cleanup to happen defensively as well. So a goalie isn't going to solve everything, but still, the Devils seem like a playoff caliber team. So I would not put it past them to be one now that they hopefully have a goalie. I guess the question is, do they? And we were actually having this chat on our Discord server, our patrons only Discord server. $1 a month through the off season gets you in. So like, why wouldn't you? It's the lowest. It's the easiest. It's the only way we can do it. And then like you stay for the off season. Like we can't do it for free. So technical reasons.
Good.
Well, I think there's some technical reason, isn't there?
Sure, that's probably one. Yeah. Where were we? So Jacob Markstrom. We were talking about Markstrom
and how like he's actually good. Like I know he's been maligned. All right, I know he's been maligned over the course of his career. At times, like there's been. I think the trouble with Markstrom is he's looked like not a starter more often than he's looked a starter when it comes down to it. And he's kind of had these alternating good, bad seasons for the last 4 years. But this past season in Calgary, where you would have thought Markstrom was not great, he was fantastic. He was like his expected Fenwick save percentage was .930, and he had a .942. So that's like a 12 save point jump, which is a big deal. Like that's top tier, approaching like the elite, like what I would consider an elite number if it is repeated over several years. Markstrom has never had a season this good. Generally, he's
To be fair, Brian, sorry, if I could just make sure I fully understand what you're saying. You're talking at even strength, right?
Yes, at 5-on-5.
Because overall his save percentage was only .905, which is pretty pedestrian. But you're, I guess, saying at even strength he looked really good compared to what his the threat of the shots against him. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, but he was also actually really good on the penalty kill.
Oh.
Yeah, so
did he just have like really tough shots against him, I guess you're saying?
Yeah, I think he had some high quality shots that he had to face. Also, I'm just pulling this up live. What do you think the average save percentage was in the NHL this past season?
I don't know, around where Markstrom was, I'm guessing. Like around 905, 904. I don't know. What is it?
That is my guess too.
Oh, you don't have it. Okay.
No, well, I have, let's see, league average. Oh, I thought I had it. Sorry. Do I have it? Okay, 898? Is that possible? 898. Huh.
Pretty low. Well, there were a lot of. Do you think there was like maybe you should look at the median? I don't know. Maybe there were a couple really bad goalies that brought it down.
Yeah, Hockey Reference has this great. Oh, here it is. This great page where they just post league averages, but I can never find it. 903. 903. So Markstrom had.
What was the 898?
I don't know. Something
okay, so should I edit this all then?
No, just leave it. It's fine.
Well, then people are going to wonder, what was this 898?
You really want to know?
Yeah, well, you said it. What was that?
898 save percentage, shot data, team statistics. I don't know, man.
That just was a number that showed up on the website. Well, how do I know that your 903 is right and the 898 is wrong? How can I trust anything?
It's a good question about why this number looks different than the league, the one on the league average page.
Okay, just for fun, just to humor me. Well, maybe we'll keep it all, but maybe also go back from where you asked me what was the league average, and then I was like, I don't know, around 905.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was 903, Elon. So Markstrom had an above average save percentage last season, and also 904 was the season before. So Markstrom had a good year.
Pedestrian. That sounds average.
But considering the quality of the competition he faced,
of course.
He was better than that. He was better than pedestrian. And I think my line on Markstrom for a while has been, I think he's an average starter who has upside to be better. There's been more downside than upside in the 3 years prior to this one. He had one good year and two not so good years. But this past year was good. So you know what? If I'm New Jersey and I'm desperate and I can get Markstrom retained, I'm into that. And Nico Daws, by the way, is a restricted free agent. The Devils, I don't think have qualified him yet. Akira Schmid is arbitration eligible as an RFA too. So I guess we'll see how all these moving pieces. Looking at the Devils,
I think we know. I think it's going to be Markstrom and Allen, and then those other two.
Yeah, the Jacobs, the Jacob and Jake. Except Allen wasn't that great last season either. So like he's going to have to find his game, or else maybe he'll be the third goalie or get waived early on. You know, I think we'll have to see how it plays out. And for what it's worth, Akira Schmid and Nico Daws were both pretty close to meeting their expected Fenwick save percentages. In fact, Akira Schmid was just a smidge above. So,
to be fair to Nico Daws, can you his stats aren't fair. He played like every game for a while.
Yeah.
I'm sure that must have wore on him at some point.
Well, and that happened to him 2 seasons ago too, where like he had a good run and then they tried to run him into the ground and that didn't go well. So, and I think Daws and Schmid had a bit like of overuse at times also. So they both still have, listen, the Devils now have Allen and Markstrom, one of whom you'd think is capable of being an NHL starter, and Daws and Schmid, one of whom you'd think would be capable of an NHL backup. And I still think like they're 23 and 24 years old, might have some untapped starter potential. So New Jersey goes from like, Markstrom is a nice option to have when there's so many question marks in your crease, and it gives them a little bit of latitude, hopefully, to work things out. But if Markstrom can provide a lot of games played and average goaltending, then hopefully that's going to be enough for the Devils to get where they want to go.
Okay. Well, this is all great. This is great info that you've provided. But I will say, pal, you didn't answer my question, which was, we're playing fantasy hockey here, and we're trying to come up with our goalie tiers. How high, if at all, does Markstrom rise in the ranks now that he goes from being Calgary's starter to presumably New Jersey's starter, in your opinion?
Yeah, not I wouldn't say a whole lot in all honesty. I'd have him a little higher because I think New Jersey is likely to win more games, but he's also in a situation where like Jake Allen, if he does play well, like there's crease to share. There's a lot of goalies in the picture. Um, so yeah, I my honest answer is I'm not like I think I'll move him up a little bit, but not a whole lot. And I'm also just seeing like defensively, Calgary wasn't a whole lot better than New Jersey was. They were like at the bottom of the top third. So like about 10 spots apart if you're ranking by expected goals against at 5-on-5. So Calgary was better defensively than New Jersey. So New Jersey, like I said, has some fine tuning to do, but yeah, I'll bump Markstrom up a touch. What about you?
Yeah, so I will say New Jersey's defense I expect to get better. Just, Hamilton will be healthy, hopefully. Then you've got Luke Hughes, who was a rookie, right? So he'll probably just get better because most people do better than they did in their rookie season. They have Nemec. So, like, I feel like who also, has experience now. So I think that I would expect New Jersey to have better defense next season. But like here's what I think. Like definitely Markstrom is very interesting in fantasy now, and I would like be excited to take him. If I you know me, like I want give me a starting goalie, and he definitely qualifies as someone that would be like a starting goalie who I'd be happy to get. But I think for actually every single player we're going to talk about today, I think like everyone's situation improved. Actually, Trev wrote that on the Discord today in the episode discussion, where I just posted like, let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about. And Trev just like chimed in even before the episode, basically saying every player we're going to talk about, he thinks that they've all had their fantasy stock get higher. And like I agree, and we'll talk about each one. But I also think all of these players we're going to talk about are people that I worry now might get like a little overhyped, and maybe you get too excited and then you potentially get burned. Because like Markstrom, don't forget, at the end of the day, you could say all the stats you want about how good he was last year. He's still 34 years old, right? Like there is a cliff that these goalies are going to fall off at some point, and you kind of never know when it's going to happen. But I think around 34, 35 is probably around the time that you'd expect a goalie to maybe have some injury that's going to end up being harder to come back from, or who knows? Like Markstrom has a lot of mileage under him, so I wouldn't like reach for him. I would like be like if he falls to me and I could get him, and when we do some more goalies board, we'll probably have a few goalies like this. But I wouldn't start being like, okay, lock it in. And also, like I said, I think maybe New Jersey's better off not running him into the ground. Like obviously they need to try to make the playoffs, and if it turns out that Markstrom's their only good goalie, then they'll just do what they have to do. I think not making the playoffs again is like kind of not an option, but. I mean, in their best situation, Jake Allen is decent enough, and they go like 60-40, and then Markstrom maybe isn't the volume starter. Like Connor Hellebuck is like, I expect will just be a volume starter again, like always. Markstrom, maybe he's maybe not like a Swayman Allmark situation, but maybe not too far off. So, yeah, I think he's okay, but I wouldn't like bet the house on Markstrom, but could be good.
Agree. Yeah, I could absolutely see people wanting to reach for him. Like it's exciting, right? Shiny new toy on a team that should be a lot better than last year. But I am very much with you, Elon. I think Dustin Wolf is coming up, and I assume we're about to talk about him too. But Markstrom in Calgary had the sure thing starter tag, and that was something that was appealing to him, even if he was playing like inconsistently. And now I feel like he's still got it, but there's a little more competition.
Yeah. Kind of makes me like I hope it won't work out this way for him, but you look at like a Eunice Corpusalo, and obviously Markstrom's had a much better career than Corpusalo. But Corpusalo was going to a new team where it seemed like he's going to be a sure starter on a team that we expect to be a playoff contender. So I'm getting like a little bit of those vibes, and obviously that didn't work out for anyone who drafted Corpusalo in fantasy. I'm not trying to be pessimistic here. Could be good, but yeah. So I think we're in agreement.
I don't think Corpusalo is like a great comp because, as you know, and as I always mention, like we seem to have a different like sentiment or like basic like perception or impression of Corpusalo, where you're like, oh sure. Yeah, solid NHL goalie, long career, and I'm like, he's never proven.
Okay, fair. Okay, let me throw another one. How about Darcy Kemper, who we'll already talk about later in the show, when he went to Washington for the first year? Maybe it's like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems a little more, a little fairer, more reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, you mentioned Dustin Wolf. So I'd imagine Dustin Wolf is the starter now on Calgary. They have Dan Vladar, who was the backup last year. He's locked in for another year. I don't think Calgary's plan is for Vladar now to take over as the starter. I think the plan is to have their awesome blue chip prospect, Dustin Wolf. And at least they give him a shot. We saw what happened with Devin Levi last year. They wanted him to be the starter. Didn't work out. Lucky for Buffalo, they have UPL. And now I'm assuming next year for Buffalo, they're going to probably just give them both, like assume it's going to be 50-50 unless one of them earns the job. But we're not talking about Buffalo today. I'd imagine the plan for Calgary is to give Dustin Wolf every opportunity to claim that starter's job. So he would become a very exciting guy to draft. But yeah, you never know. It's a young goalie.
Yeah.
And even sometimes these really blue chip guys take a little bit of time to become awesome in fantasy. So a little bit of buyer beware. But if he falls late in drafts, I would definitely be interested in a Dustin Wolf as a potential starter on. I think Calgary's not a terrible team, so could be good. And he has a really high pedigree.
Yeah. Dustin Wolf was bad last year. I'm going to start with that.
In Calgary or in the minors?
In Calgary.
But he played like how many games?
17.
5? 17. Oh, 17. Oh, man.
Yeah. But he was all he was.
I didn't even notice that was happening.
Yeah, he was. There was a run where he played a lot, and maybe he was tired. And I think the Flames were just seeing how. You remember, like they were in the playoff race for a while, and Markstrom was injured, and Vladar was awful. By the way, Vladar played 20 games and performed 21 save points below expected at 5-on-5, which is like league like that. That's a league worst range of number. Wolf played 15 save points below expected, which is also in league worst range, which really just emphasizes how fantastic Markstrom was, who, by the way, got the worst protection of the three and still performed 11 or 12 save points higher than his expected number. So Wolf and Vladar both didn't look good. Wolf, you can forgive, right? He's new. He's coming into his own. He's figuring things out. This is his first NHL action. Vladar, you can't. And Elon, I feel like Wolf is the only option. I'm not terribly convinced that Vladar is an NHL backup.
Fair. So yeah, maybe, I mean, there's a whole offseason to go. Maybe Calgary signs a goalie and then sends Vladar to the minors, waves him. Yeah, there's a lot that could happen.
I could still definitely see Calgary trying Vladar, like trying to get there with him, depending on like there's not a whole lot out there. But he's the sort of guy, like, I don't know, it's sort of David Riddick vibes, except he's never really gone on even a small run like Riddick has in the past, where he's just not taking to it. So Dustin Wolf, I think, is going to have the leg up going into camp, assuming the Flames don't make any more moves. And if it's just he and Vladar in the crease, whether it starts as a competition or not, I can't see Vladar starting a meaningful number of games or starting a meaningful number of games well. So I think Wolf's value out of all the goalies here goes up the highest. And I would be like, would I draft him ahead of Markstrom? No. But would I value him a whole lot less? No. Like I imagine there's going to be a bigger ADP cap between Markstrom and Wolf than I have them valued, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, so Wolf for sure could end up being a really good sleeper, depending on how far he falls. I think there's going to be another goalie we're going to talk about later that I'm potentially higher on than these two, but I guess we can keep a ranking going as we go. Definitely for a keeper league, this is great news. For like if you're in a dynasty league and you have Dustin Wolf, his timeline just got expedited, right? If Markstrom was in the picture, you were still waiting. Maybe we're going to hope next year Wolf, plays a little bit more, and then maybe the year after they're like 50-50. But yeah, now all of a sudden, yeah, Dustin Wolf could just come in and be a volume starter. Hopefully he can handle it. For what it's worth for Dustin Wolf, and to his credit, in his AHL games last year, he was really good. He had a .922 save percentage in the regular season, .924 save percentage in 6 playoff games. So yeah, he's just got to get over the hump there, playing against the elite in the NHL. But okay, Brian, I guess so that covers our first trade. It's going to be mostly goalie talk, I'm realizing today. But before we go on to the LA and Washington trade, let's take a quick break. We'll be back in just a sec. You're listening to Keep It Karlsson. Welcome back, everybody. So Brian, let's talk about the other big deal that happened last week. 1-for-1, no retention, very simple. Darcy Kemper for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Two guys who probably had contracts that their teams maybe were regretting having signed. And now they both, I guess, are going to get a fresh start on a new team. I guess we got to start with Pierre-Luc Dubois, right? Because he's definitely the big name here. Last summer, huge splash, right? LA paid quite a bit for Dubois, a few really strong assets, and including Gabe Vilardi, and then also signed Dubois to a big contract. And then it was just like it couldn't have gone worse, right? By the end of the year, he was like getting like fourth line minutes in the playoffs. Like he didn't do anything. But if I bring up the points, 40 points in 82 games in the regular season for Dubois. And then this looked like LA looked like a team that could challenge, but only didn't help that in their 5 games before getting eliminated, Dubois only had 1 goal and no assists. Dubois was only playing 14 minutes and 50 seconds in the playoffs. So he stunk. He fell into free agency in pretty much all of the couple divisions at one point this season. So he just was a useless person in fantasy. But let's remind ourselves, just the year before in 2022-23, Dubois had a 71-point pace with Winnipeg. And the year before that, he had a 61-point pace. So this is a guy who has been a significant contributor in fantasy hockey. So it's really hard to peg. Like he goes to Washington. Obviously, if Washington is willing to take on this contract, which still has 7 years left at 8.5 cap hit. So this is the only reason Washington is taking this is because they still think Dubois is worth it, which means I think we could confidently say he's going to start in the top 6, very likely top power play. So that's good. Maybe he's centering Ovechkin. Obviously, that's not worth as much as maybe it used to be, or maybe he'll make it worth it again, as Ovechkin needs like 40 goals or something to break the Gretzky record. So I think there's definitely huge upside. Like I don't think there's any reason, like, there's no reasonable argument to be made that this doesn't increase Pierre-Luc Dubois' fantasy value rather than if he had stayed in LA. The question is just to what extent and how confident are we, if at all, that Dubois can just prove that this past season was just a total wash, forget it ever happened, and he'll just go back on the track that he was on before last season.
Right. Well, that's the big question. And there's opportunity here for Dubois that he really didn't see in LA past maybe the second quarter of the season, where, Dubois had some quality time with Kevin Fiala and Alex Laferriere, but they were outscored 9-8 as a line. And they won the shot share battle. So like it was working pretty well, but not well enough for Dubois to stay there. And Fiala, we know, moved lines. But Dubois, the rest of the time, is playing with guys like Kaliev, still with Alex Laferriere, Carl Grundstrom, Jarrett Anderson-Dolan. So bottom 6, like decisively bottom 6. And really this year, in terms of ice time and line mates, looks pretty similar to the year where he gave up in Columbus and was swapped to Winnipeg for Patrick Laine. And sorry, it wasn't for Patrick Laine, right? You're muted.
It was for Patrick Laine.
Oh, it was. Okay. So how did what was the Velarde? How did Velarde
That was
get
to
there?
LA. That's when Velarde got traded from Winnipeg to
with Laine?
Okay. So first Columbus traded Dubois to Winnipeg for Laine.
Okay.
Then Dubois was on Winnipeg. Then Dubois got traded from Winnipeg to LA, and Velarde came back
right.
in that trade.
Yes. Okay. Of course. Okay. So I'm right. Okay. So for Laine. Those 2 seasons, Dubois saw the least ice time per game that he's ever seen, the least role, and he also seemed like the least effective. His last couple of years in Winnipeg, remember, he's playing top 6 minutes and performing like a top 6 forward for most of it, and that just fell off. I mean, some of that is you would expect because you are playing bottom 6 minutes with bottom 6 players. But it's a little suspect. It's a little suspect. And so, I think you just have to know what you're getting into if you do go with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Elon, like you said, there seems to be opportunity. The thing is that if you're not playing with Ovechkin, let's say Ovechkin and Strome get paired up, you're not really playing with anyone, right? Like maybe Max Pacioretty, I guess Tom Wilson. You can look at
UFA. Forget about Pacioretty.
Okay, well, if he comes back, I thought he said he wanted to. Oh, maybe he just said he wanted to return in general.
To the NHL. I don't think Washington is that interested.
There's the whole Connor McMichael, Miroshnichenko, Hendrix Lapierre protests, all Beck Malenstein, Sonny Milano, all these guys who've sort of been mixed into the top 6, but none of whom I'm certain are a top 6 forward. So Pierre-Luc Dubois still could find himself kind of alone at 5-on-5, which I think would bring him Maybe like if he can get on the top power play, maybe he could get to like a 50-point pace there. So even that isn't a certain thing. But yeah, Elon, I look at his career history. There's 2 bad years. There's the one where he was traded from Columbus to Winnipeg, and that was just a write off. And there was last year in LA, which also became a write off because things just weren't working. So good for the Kings for getting out from under Pierre-Luc Dubois, and good for the Capitals for, I guess, maybe seeing an opportunity. I'm not terribly optimistic, and I'm not going to draft Pierre-Luc Dubois with any significant draft capital.
Yeah, I think that's, again, like, it's like clearly his value's gone up. He's worth drafting now, worth a shot, see what he can do. But yeah, we were talking in our group chat with the short shifts guys, and we were saying like some of them were saying like around 10th, 11th round, something like that, maybe 9th. I don't even know in the couple. I just feel kind of like, no, to me this is more like a 13th, 14th. Like I'll give it a shot at some point, but as long as there's players that I'm pretty confident can be like 60-ish point players, I'd probably just go with that, because like what even is the upside, like you say, Brian, on Washington for Dubois, even if he does go back to being like, even if he goes back to his best ever season, that's only like 70-ish points, and then there's huge downsides. So I wouldn't be taking a huge swing. Brian, we're about to be drafting for Dynasty League soon, a brand new Dynasty League with some of the patrons. And I'm definitely not interested in a cap. It's a cap dynasty, I should say. I'm definitely not interested in drafting Dubois and taking on this cap hit. I'll definitely let someone else take that risk. That'll be interesting to see if he even gets drafted or if he'll start the season in free agency, because everyone's too afraid to take on this huge cap hit. But the Washington Capitals were willing to do it. So why? But I wonder if at this point for Washington, it's like everything is just about getting Ovechkin these next 40 goals. And so it's like, get him a center. Maybe he'll help on the power play. Maybe he'll help at even strength. And like, who cares about the long-term consequences? Like, anything we can do to get this record broken is worth it. So it's hard for me to like just figure out the, what the motivations are for anything Washington does while Ovechkin is chasing this record.
I know you're really like team chase the record, and I also like the record is unbreakable, right? Like this is probably the only chance we'll ever have to see it broken.
I don't know. I don't think that. I think Matthews is like on track, kind of.
Yeah,
but that's a whole separate conversation. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm not rooting for it. Like, call me.
You're not rooting for the
fun.
record to get broken?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm not necessarily team. I'm just saying Washington, the Capitals are definitely team chase the record. And,
okay.
Yeah, and Ovechkin himself, I think, is. So I'm saying I think they're going for it, and so I'm just saying maybe that's why they're getting Dubois and taking on this crazy contract. Might not be best for the team's long-term success, but at the same time, maybe they're like, who cares? This is the only thing we care about right now. But I don't know. They wouldn't say that, obviously, to the media. Okay, so that's the Dubois side. I don't think anyone else on Washington is really affected. Maybe we could now be a little bit more concerned about a Dylan Strome. It's not like he was going to be super highly sought after in fantasy anyways. Over on the LA side, so they get Darcy Kemper. Oh, wait. Brian, obviously, the other big thing in Washington is that Kemper's gone. So maybe we can stick on the Washington side quickly.
Okay.
Now, Charlie Lindgren, and word has come out, like the coach or the GM, they've been saying, yeah, we're happy with Lindgren. We think he's earned a chance at being the starter. And now it's not going to be a battle of camp. It's like he's going to go in as the guaranteed number one starter. So maybe before we even get to Darcy Kemper, let's throw Charlie Lindgren into this ranking, where currently we have Markstrom a little bit higher than Dustin Wolf, you were saying, for how you would draft them for next season, but pretty much in the same category. Is Charlie Lindgren in the same category as those guys, or higher or lower? What do you think?
I'm going to put him higher, because I think he's going to play more, and I think there's a decent enough chance that he's going to be about as good as them. That's my full take. Lindgren last season, he played really well for a while at the start. Like, he was money. I had him on my roster. He was money every single time, or almost every single time he was in net. And then he was like time sharing with Kemper, and they kept going back and forth, even though it seemed like Lindgren was mostly winning the job. And then Lindgren eventually did get a string of starts and was inconsistent. So, Lindgren last season, 60% quality starts, which is a really important stat for fantasy, 911 save percentage overall, and played just below what you'd expect of an average goalie at 5-on-5. But I'm not going to take anything. Sorry. No, that was Kemper who played just below what you would expect. Lindgren played 5 save points above his expected number.
Ah.
Yeah. So I, and that tracks. I was a little surprised to see that he played less. So Charlie Lindgren, starting goalie on a team, Like I'm still confused how Washington came as close as they did to a playoff spot this
They
year.
made the playoffs, Brian.
Oh
They
right,
lost
yeah.
the Rangers.
That's how little I can believe that Washington got a
Yeah.
playoff spot this year. I don't see it in their future next year. I think every other team lost the spot more than they won it. Sorry, Caps fans. But I think that was sort of validated by the way they played in the playoffs. But yeah, I'll take Charlie Lindgren on like a middling, like on a bubble team, starting
Yeah.
the lion's share of the starts. I know. Are you going to talk about Hunter Shepard?
No, I'm not gonna.
Okay.
I don't think Hunter Shepard. He has a chance to become the backup. I
He's
think
in the
there'll be a
mix.
battle with a few goalies. But okay, here's the thing. Like again, like for fantasy, especially like I think we've all or a lot of us have come to learn that maybe it's not even worth spending a high pick on a goalie because it could be so random. And like Charlie Lindgren is a good example of that. He was available in free agency for a lot of people at different times last season, and if you got him at the right time, he really helped you. But once again, tell me if this is a fairer comparison. But maybe Charlie Lindgren is like a Corpusalo. Like he's coming off a good year, sure, but before that, no one was ever talking about Charlie Lindgren as like a sure NHLer, let alone a sure like starter. So there's a chance Lindgren can't be as good as he was last year, but it's also there's a chance that last year was a bit of an aberration. So I'll grab him at the right time in a draft and take a shot in a starter, but with the thinking that it's also possible I'll drop him. So I would definitely disagree with you now that I'm talking this through and say I would definitely take Markstrom ahead of Charlie Lindgren because I think Markstrom is a lot more established as a sure like decent enough starter in the league, and Lindgren has only had the one good year. But tell me if there's any holes in my thinking here.
Lindgren just, it's hard to gauge because he hasn't had an opportunity. He's also undrafted, right? Like he's really worked his way up into the league. He turns 31 this December. So this will be his age 31 season for Charlie Lindgren. And I saw somebody post like their latest sort of theory on goaltending was that goaltenders fall off around age 31, 32, 33. So I guess like Lindgren's right there, and there's a chance this doesn't go well. The thing is that he has like very few miles on him. He's played 114 games, which you can either say is a good thing because he's fresher, his body is less weathered and battle worn, or you can say, well, why has he only played 114 games since he made his NHL debut with the Habs back in 2015-16. In limited NHL action, I think Lindgren has looked pretty good on the whole, but he's never really had a whole lot of a test. So, Elon, if you ask me who I wanted in the Senators net next year, I would take Lindgren over Korpisalo, just because I feel like Korpisalo is the same age, roughly, and I feel like I already know what I'm going to get from him. So
well, that's not what I was asking.
I'll take the box.
I'm just trying to come up with some comparison to Korpisalo before the episode is over. So I feel like maybe Lindgren now is like Korpisalo last year at this time, but whatever. Okay.
No, I think there's a little more hope. There's a little more upside for Lindgren.
Some people thought Korpisalo had upside last year. Well, the Sens management did when they signed him that big contract.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So on the other side of the coin, we have Darcy Kemper, who I guess similar to Pierre-Luc Dubois was really disappointing last year, right? He lost the job to Charlie Lindgren, and he only had an .890 save percentage. Before that, in his first year with Washington, he was pretty solid. He was above average, at least in raw save percentage, at a .909. The year before that, of course, he had a great year, winning a cup with Colorado and having a .921 save percentage. Obviously, that might have just helped being Colorado's goalie. We've seen Alex Georgiev have some good seasons in Colorado, but that started to fall off a little bit last season. So, what to make of Darcy Kemper, who is 34 years old, the same age as Jacob Markstrom. The thing, okay, so he's the goalie I was saying before that I think might be the one I'm most interested in because I think he might fall in drafts to a decent extent, but I think he's coming in now as the clear starter on LA. They have Riddick, who you mentioned before, locked in for another year. So unless LA gets another goalie, I'd imagine they're going to go with Kemper Riddick. And LA is a team that's made blah goalies look really good recently, right? We all remember Phoenix Copley coming up and looking really good. Cam Talbot was an all-star last season before he fell off for a little bit. So Darcy Kemper, like it's possible that he's just like hit the wall and he's like not good anymore. And last season was like the start of a fall, or it can be he just had a bad year. And of course, with goalies, it's impossible to predict. But I think if he falls far enough, I think Darcy Kemper going to LA and being their starter. And I think LA is a really good team. like people don't necessarily think of them as like one of the top teams in the league, especially after their playoffs. But I still like think they could become one of those teams where like their goalie has a good chance to win every game. I mean, not every game, but you know what I mean. Anytime they play, there's a decent chance they'll win. So yeah, I become very interested in Darcy Kemper. I'd probably still have Markstrom higher if I had to pick one for fantasy next year, but I feel like I'd rather wait a couple rounds, get a couple good skaters, and then end up with Kemper versus using a higher pick on Markstrom.
I would rather Kemper than Markstrom. And
All right.
largely, like, one big reason is the one you ended with, which is that, like, he plays for LA, right? Look at what LA did for Cam Talbot last year. So if they can do that for Cam Talbot, look at what they could hopefully do for Kemper. And I know he's not coming off the greatest year, but at 5-on-5, he was decent, just a couple save points below expected. And basically every year before that, going back to 2017-18, when I don't know if you remember, but he played 19 games for LA. He has been above his expected number in every season but one of them, playing at least 19 games and as many as 57. So I see Kemper as someone who has been a workhorse. He's 3 times in the last 6 years, 57, 57, and 55 game seasons. I see him as somebody who's put up a quality start more often than not. I see him as being on a team that is really, really good. And for me, that's good enough to prefer him the most of all these goalies. I think there's less of a challenge also from anybody else on the roster taking starts. Yeah, I guess, you know what, I mentioned the quality start piece, and I think maybe that's the only caveat with Kemper, is that last year his quality starts. Well, last year was like a terrible year, 890 save percentage. A lot of that loss was on the penalty kill, so I don't like totally fault him for that. But the 47% quality starts is not good. The year before with Washington, 50% quality starts, also not good. A couple of years before that with Colorado and Arizona, 55%, which is fine. All right. The couple of years before that was better, but that's going back too far. So I just want somebody, like, the thing with Kemper is he's been, I rostered him last year. He was like the one goalie that I was holding for the first several months of the season. And it was such a roller coaster every time he started. And every time I thought he was getting going, he wasn't. It would just fall off, and without any measure of predictability, which is like kind of how goalies work. But I'd love a little more consistency if I could get it, which is maybe the trade-off you're making if you do prefer Jacob Markstrom. But Markstrom hasn't been terribly consistent himself. Like over the last 2 seasons, his quality start number is not that different from Darcy Kemper's. So all that said, I will take the player on the better team. Darcy, like, Kemper's also 34 years old.
Same as Markstrom.
Yeah, same as
Anyway,
Mark.
sounds like
Yeah.
to you it's close to a coin flip
It's
anyways.
it's close. It's close.
I just really think that a lot of these quality starts, and I know it's supposed to kind of, like, save percentage is supposed to kind of not count so much the team because, if it's a bad team, they have more shots against. So it all evens out, but, or whatever. You can look into the quality. But at the end of the day, I just think LA has given me good vibes recently, except for when Jonathan Quick was there. Then not so much. But I feel like, and Cal Peterson, that was a disaster. But I just feel like I'm confident in an LA starter. So I just feel good about Kemper. But who knows? I think Schmore goalies board might be like 12 goalies in tier 3 or 4, wherever we end up putting all these guys. Because I feel like all these guys I feel pretty similarly about in terms of my confidence that they'll be worthwhile in fantasy. So that's where we land. I'll have Hellebuck and Shesterkin in tier 1. After that, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting episode, that's for sure. But okay, we're almost done, Brian. A couple small news items I wanted to throw at you. First of all, Philly has announced that Matvei Michkov is coming over from the KHL. And when he was drafted, it was a whole thing. Everyone was like, oh, the Russian factor. What if he doesn't come ever? What if it's like you have to wait a long time? That's why he fell in the draft, which I think was 7th overall. Some teams passed on him, even though everyone was saying that Michkov probably looks like, besides Bedard, like maybe the next best player out there. But all of a sudden, I guess he didn't like. I remember I saw a bunch of tweets from Philly beat writers early in the season about how, the KHL coaches were like we're benching Michkov because he's got to pay his dues or whatever. And I guess maybe he didn't like that or whatever. I don't know what happened over there, but it's a big shock. And Michkov is coming over. And I think this is like a guy who in dynasty leagues, now you're even more like people are already like falling over themselves for this guy. But now even for 1-year leagues for next year, I think he's someone that you need to know about. I feel like, everyone's going to be excited about Macklin Celebrini, who's going to go first overall to the Sharks. And he's going to be someone that's going to definitely get drafted in 1-year leagues like a couple next season. And I feel like it's going to be a really interesting discussion of Michkov versus Celebrini and who's going to be the rookie that you want first of all the available rookies. Maybe there's some other options. I'll do a show later in the summer with Victor like I always do, or we'll talk through all the Calder candidates. But I don't know. When I'm looking at beat writers from Philly, like already drooling over potential line combinations, looks like they've got Michkov like top 6, like locked in already. So I think this is going to be a potentially big impact guy right from the start. So I'm not a big prospect guy, but just get him on your radars, people, for your 1-year leagues next year. Don't let him go undrafted. I'm sure, but there'll be a lot of hype throughout the preseason, whatever. But I think this could be a big hit. Like we could be looking at, I don't know, you don't want to go as high as like a Kaprizov or whatever. And also Michkov is a lot younger. Like Kaprizov came over like 26 years old, but we might be talking something potentially similar. Panarin and Kaprizov are obviously the highest level, and I think he's good. Okay, everyone says he's good. That's all I can tell you.
Everyone says he's good. The Matvei Michkov story. He wasn't as good. Well, actually, he played fewer games. I was gonna say he wasn't good enough to lead. He wasn't as good as Artur Tianulin, 26-year-old who led Sochi Hockey Club.
Yeah, because the coaches were not treating him with the respect
in
that
points.
Michkov deserved. They were like, "You're young.
He also
sit
played
on the bench."
He also played 16 games more and had only 4 more points. So Michkov with the same number of games would have been just fine. I think in Philly. So very exciting. Also, I don't know if you remember. Do you remember like the Evgeny Malkin like defection? Like it was
no.
it was. I bring this up like once every couple of years on the show.
I
Like,
know
it was,
Alexander McGillney had a defection.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
It was all so cloak and dagger. Like the Penguins had to find a way to get Malkin into North America without anyone really noticing. And like there was like some like a lot of tension between Russia and the NHL. Like there's all kinds of fees and like, quote unquote bureaucracy, which may or may not be corrupt around like Russia. Like look it up. It's a really fascinating story, and I guess when Malkin retires, maybe we'll all revisit it together. So it's great that Michkov is coming over. I hope it for sure happens. My question is when he gets there, who does he play with? Like Philly is looking rough for centers, right? Well, they have Couturier, who seems to be out of favor, right? Yeah, so forget Couturier. I guess they have Frost.
Yeah, I think that the tweets I've been seeing have had like Frost and like a Konechny.
You could do Frost and put Konechny because Michkov is listed as a right wing, so put Konechny on the left, and then you've got 3 guys in a top line. It just depends. It doesn't really matter if Morgan Frost can carry that line because Konechny has shown that he can handle it. But I guess this is just my general observation.
Owen Tippett.
You're saying he's not a center.
Well, I'm just saying other tweets I've seen have been like Frost, Michkov, Tippett. But yeah, as far as center goes, there is an offseason coming. So maybe Philly goes and signs an Elias Lindholm or whoever, someone to help down the middle. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. I wonder if they would have liked Pierre-Luc Dubois to play with me. No, nobody wants that guy around. And like, honestly, Washington it's the perfect destination, right? Like there's already a culture, like no one cares. It's just like, get it to Ovi. That's it. And if you try and do anything else, forget you. But back to Philly, very exciting. Matvei Michkov, Elon. I don't know. I'm trying to think of who the comp from last season was. Like who the rookie that we all kind of wanted to draft, but not invest a ton of draft capital in. Like he's not going as high as Bedard, right?
I don't think Bedard. Like people were excited about Fantilli. Obviously, didn't work out super well, or like Logan Cooley. But I think Michkov is a little bit higher for me than those guys were last year, but we'll see. Like I asked Victor in our Keeping Karlsson Discord in the Prospects channel what he thinks about Michkov versus Celebrini for next season. For what it's worth, he said Celebrini, but he thinks it's close. He said, I do worry about torting with Michkov. And he said he does not have a good 200-foot game, and his off-puck awareness is poor at times, and Torts is going to hate that. Celebrini, on the other hand, is going to get all the ice time he could handle, and his all-around game is already better than many NHLers. But then he said, in a points-only or heavy league, I'll take Michkov. But Celebrini, he said, like also has more banger stats. I think both of these guys are going to go, I don't know, 6th, 7th round in a cupful. I could see that happening. I would take either over Dubois for what it's worth. If I'm taking a swing on someone,
yes,
I'd rather Michkov at this point.
I'm with you there.
All right. So the other news item I wanted to bring up quickly, which was suggested in the Discord. Actually, I should have written down who it was, but I recall it was someone great. It was Chris. Yes. Any thoughts on Brandon Montour and if his career trajectory has been altered by the recent playoff games? Yeah, so just quickly going back to the playoffs to end the show here, Brandon Montour, who is a UFA and was someone I think we were interested to see what would happen. And, he came back this year from his injury. He was slow at first, but then seemed to pick things up for Florida. But the last couple playoff games, he hasn't even been the top power play anymore. Oliver Ekman-Larsson took over on PP1 for Florida in Game 6. Really makes that's not a good look for Brandon Montour going into UFA now, where teams, I'd imagine he was hoping he would get like a 6-7 year deal with someone from a team thinking that he can like solve their power play problems. But now if they're seeing in the Cup Finals when it matters most, Oliver Ekman-Larsson of all people are taking his spot. I think that, obviously we'll talk more about Montour when he does get signed in the summer by someone. But yeah, he only has 2 points now in the 6 games versus Edmonton. He only had 1 point in the 6 games versus the Rangers. He was decent. Like he had a few good games in the series against Boston. But yeah, I think that Montour is... I think he's hurt. Like if I was like the Leafs or you see different teams out there as like, Chris even listed some Carolina, St. Louis, like teams that could use a top power play quarterback. I feel like maybe they're a little less confident that the answer is Brandon Montour at this point.
Yeah. You know what? I feel like this run does not impact his value on the market. And that doesn't necessarily answer your question, but I think for Montour, no matter what he does, someone's going to pony up what they felt he was worth going into this season. And I wouldn't read so much. Remember, he's coming back from injury. I don't know if he's injured now. He ended the season really rough. Like you're talking about power play capacity. He was quarterbacking that top unit for the last 2 months of the season. He had a total of 3 power play points in his last 21 games. He also had just 1 power play point in his first 13 games. So put that together, and he basically picked up 15 of his 17 power play points, or 14 or 13. You could do the math exactly if you want, in about 33 games. So he had a really, really productive stretch, and then right in the middle, but started bad and ended bad as a power play quarterback. I don't think, Elon, that anybody is going to be so dissuaded from going for Montour. And I actually think, forget the NHL teams. I want to know, what you as a dynasty manager are thinking about Montour and whether, he might have been worth, whatever salary he can get on the open market. But now, I have to imagine you'd be more gun shy if you're responsible for his cap hit. I'm not saying that I think you should be, but I imagine that his desirability takes a hit in cap leagues here.
I think so. We'll see where he signs. And, but the thing is, the thing we're going to have to keep reminding ourselves is that sometimes things look so perfect and then it still doesn't work out. I don't want to be a broken record forever. This was the last time I ever stayed on the podcast. Okay, Brian? But I go back to Taylor Hall last year and thinking how can this not work out? I know he did get injured, but even before he got injured, he was already getting bumped from the Bedard line and whatever. So I just wonder if what if Montour goes to... Sure, Toronto spends big money on him. And then they're well, clearly they're doing that because they want him to take over from Morgan Riley on the top power play. And how can that not be incredible considering who he'd be playing with? You just think this is for sure thing. And then you never know, right? He'd get a shot to start the season and then he has to earn it. And that's the thing with a Brandon Montour who's really only had that one incredible season. So I would definitely be gun shy if he gets a 6-year contract with some team that's for a big cap hit. But that'll be fun to discuss when he does sign somewhere. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he only signs a 1-year contract, and then obviously it's a lot easier.
Elon, a lot changed with his deployment last year in Florida for that 75-point pace season. And he'd only been in Florida one season prior to that, playing 6 minutes less a night with a power play 2 role. So it was like very different, but he had a 37-point pace. And I guess my question to you is, does Montour fit the bill as the guy who's done it once to you? Like,
Yeah.
like, is he there with like, is Montour a mistake you're going to try and learn from for like based on, Chychrun and Petrie? Do we think Montour is going to the same place as those guys? And like that's my big question. I don't know that I really have a great answer, and I want to see where he lands before really trying to answer it. But that's my like this is a guy who's like he's been in the league for I think this was what his 7th or 8th full season. He just turned 30, so he's on the backside of his career, and he just showed up last season and only last season.
Yeah, like maybe he's a late, Brent Burns took a while before turning into a stud, but I don't know if Brandon Montour is a Brent Burns. Shams is bringing up a good point, which you also said, Brian. Maybe like once the playoffs end tomorrow, it'll be announced that Montour was playing on like 2 broken knees and whatever other crazy injuries these players play through in the playoffs. Maybe that'll explain why he's really slowed down for these last couple of rounds. But yeah. But I guess we'll continue. Let's put a pin in it, and we'll continue our Brandon Montour conversation when we come back with some really fun episodes. Like really soon, right? Like in a couple of weeks, we'll be doing episodes talking about all the free agents, and there's so many free agents. It's gonna be like 3 shows. Like we're gonna have to do a whole show just about like Gensel and Reinhardt and like Elias Lindholm. Like there's some like superstars we're gonna have to talk through. Ryan, I think Brandon Montour probably qualifies. He'll get in that episode 1 of free agent frenzy episodes if he signs early. But yeah, there's gonna be a lot of players to talk through. It's gonna be a ton of fun. So many goalies. We're gonna definitely do a lot more goalie talk. We could we'll just do like a whole ranking of goalies before we even get to More Goalies Board of all the goalies whose situations have changed in the offseason. So yeah, we've got a lot of fun episodes coming. Like we said at the top of the show, you're also going to get another episode tomorrow or Tuesday morning into your feed where we talked all about the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, all the interesting rule decisions. And this is a good episode, I think, not only for if you're like thinking of joining our league and just learning about that, but also just we tried to make it just a general pros and cons of different rule decisions that you can use for designing your leagues. It was a really fun show. We recorded it a week ago. From what I recall, it was really good. And so that's going to be coming to your feed very soon. And then, yeah, we're going to be hitting you with these free agent podcasts, the draft. Like we're going to be on top of the fantasy impacts of everything. So make sure you're subscribed to Keeping Karlsson for the rest of this off season. And with that, Brian, I think I'm done my blabbing. So let's cue the outro music. Why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Patty, Ricard, David, Ryan, Tom, Zach, Andrea, Sammy, Ivan, Phil, Aaron, Patrick, Brian, Jordan, Michael, Don, Roman, and Paul. Thank you, Elon and Shams, for Game Day Tweets. Thank you for Game Day Tweets. That's it. Oh, also, as you'll hear, thanks to Kevin Hebert, our Cupful coordinator, who's working through the summer to make the 10th season of the Cupful the best one yet. And yeah, we will say that every single year we run the Cupful because I think it is getting better every single season. Anyway, stay tuned for more on that. You can thank BrandonWeeb.com for our logo art. You can thank Pat Roach for our outro music. I know I do. This episode was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Natural Stat Trick, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, and Elite Prospects.
Great job as always. Brian, once again, also good luck to our 8 KKPP finalists tomorrow. And we'll see who wins the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool. Good luck to, I'm just going to say it, the Edmonton Oilers. Let's bring it home. Okay. And what should we all do while we are going to wait to see who wins the cup and then get to all the offseason excitement that's going to be coming at us very, very soon?
Yeah. I mean, who's waiting to see who wins the cup? Like, I'm proactively seeking to find the cup winner.
I'm going to a bar with some friends, and they were like, let's go to this place. It has half-price wings, and I don't eat wings. But I was like, whatever. I'd rather just be with a big group. It's going to be a lot of high fives, I think. It's going to be a lot of fun. And maybe they'll have good nachos. I hope. I didn't even look it up. I don't want to like look it up and then see they don't like have even nachos or they have bad nachos. Then I'm like just disappointed. I'd rather go in excited that I'm going to be eating good nachos, drinking good beer, watching a good game.
Right. And hope the company is good enough that you just don't even end up caring that much about the quality of the nachos. Is that possible?
It's possible. I would be
Oh,
still a little,
but
but I mean, yeah. I
unlikely.
mean, or the game also should be exciting. Well, I don't even
Yeah.
know what do we prefer here.
You
If you're
just want a party, right? Like if you lived in Florida or like anywhere where Florida fans are more likely to be found, you'd be cheering for the Panthers, right?
yeah, I don't know. There is something about a Canadian team winning that's not, and I'm not even like a patriotic person, but I don't know. Something about it is like eating at me. Like I do really want. Oh, I guess I also did make a bet. Like I'm gonna win some money.
Okay,
if
like
Edmonton wins, so that
I
helps
feel
too.
like there is missing subtext here. Like I've never heard from you before that like you want the Canadian team to win. Like I've
Okay, well,
only
the
ever
Canadian team
heard you
hasn't
want the
been in the
Leafs to
final.
win because that would make your life more fun.
I mean, I was cheering for Montreal when they made it to the finals a few years back. That
Okay, yeah, I
didn't
think
go
that
well.
tracks.
All right.
Okay.
Anyways, what is the outro music still playing? It
Yeah,
probably stopped at some point and then restarted. By the way, for
Okay.
anyone who's like,
Well,
what is that?
listen, while you're eating nachos or high fiving your friends or drinking a beer, please make sure you're doing what you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Great show, pal. Thanks for watching. Ooh, 5 people are here now.
What? It's too many. Glad you didn't tell me before.
You would have been nervous.
What are we gonna call this one?
You mean the number? Episode number?
Pre off season movement.
Sure. That sounds good. All right. I'll leave that to you. See you, everybody. I'm
Boom.
going to end the stream now. Thanks again for watching.
Okay. Bye.
But Brian, you stay.
Oh, okay.
Bye, everyone.